Hi everyone, and welcome to this session at the Digital Workplace Strategy Summit. My name's Lee Harper, and I'll be talking to you today about building a responsible employee analytics program. Here's our agenda. We'll cover 3 topics here. First, what do we mean by responsible in this context? 2, the first step of any program, how do we set effective analytics goals to empower that? And then finally, I'll introduce you to a framework for how to think through building a responsible employee analytics program. I'll tell you how to do that. You know your business better than I do, but some things to think about and consider when you are designing the program to make it work for everyone in your company. I'm Lee Harper. I lead Catapult's data science and machine learning engineering capability, which covers this kind of area as well. So happy to be talking to you all. So as we go through, you will see in the bottom corner a QR code. If at any point you want to kind of reach out to talk to me or one of my team members, you can scan that in and be sent to the page to do that. Let's start by what do we mean by responsible? And one thing you'll see here very specifically is that I don't talk about ethics here. Okay, this is responsible, not ethical. And why is that? Ethics is really influenced by our personal worldview, our politics, religion, socioeconomic status, our nationality, our culture, and many more things besides. So that's just really hard to, if you get 10 people in a room, it's really hard to actually agree on what ethical actually means. There are some obvious things, but beyond the obvious, actually it's quite challenging. So responsibility is different to that because it's somewhat more objective. Not perfectly, but somewhat more. This is less influenced by our personal morality. In general, we can agree better on what's responsible as adult human beings rather than strictly what's ethical. So through this lens, we can define better frameworks. We can also apply them more generally and be critical without undermining individuals. Okay, we can criticize things without people feeling their own ethical, moral compass is being damaged. The biggest influence here is the culture we exist within. What's responsible in America will be different to what's responsible in parts of Europe, or in China, or in Japan or Australia. These things will look different, but that's okay, right? We can still define these things locally, rather than being sort of people's personal world views. So this ties in then to this maturity model. You've seen this before in other talks, I'm sure. We're here on the far right-hand side in analytics. And really, if you're going to do this and do it well and responsibly, you need to really be at least in level 3 of this framework. Okay, if you don't already have defined initiatives, if you don't already have at least some version of the truth and using critical data in a secure, protected way, it's very hard to do this responsibly and well. So this isn't the first thing you do. This is something that you do when you've got some maturity in your analytics side. So how do we go about defining objectives within a responsible framework? Okay, this is always going to be the first thing that we need to do is, what do we actually want to do with our new analytics program? Step 1, define what actually matters. Okay, what does your company or organization really care about? Okay, if you're commercial, it could be revenue or profit, new customer accounts, higher retention or lower churn rates. If you're in government, it might be to optimize tax revenue spend, or help more constituents, or award or be given more grant money. Both might have some element of customer satisfaction or employee engagement or brand reputation. But figure out what matters to you. Step 2, once you've done that, now we should define how we're going to measure that thing. Okay, again, no program yet. How do we measure it? Some things are obvious. Okay, if you're doing revenue, hopefully you're already measuring that and measuring that well and accurately, as an example. But things like engagement are harder to measure quantitatively. That can have many different kinds of meanings, okay, or be very, broad as a thing to define. But to do this well, we have to measure quantitatively, which could be things like survey results of our employees, anonymized, of course, NPS scores, Net Promoter Scores from our employees, or even AI-powered sentiment scores. Microsoft is under the hood reading your emails that you send internally or your team's messages. We could use that to use AI to tell us, are things positive or negative? Are people angry or happy with the way things are going right now? There's also more transactional focused things as well, like, how many times people are actually posting on Teams, how much time is being spent on tasks or in meetings. None of these on their own might be, what you want to measure, but they all lead up to measuring elements of what actually matters to you as an organization. Step 3, and this is one that people often get tripped up by, correlation is not causation. Okay, so we want to analyze our data and make good inference on what we're doing. But it's very easy to say, well, this is true, and hence we'll do this blanket thing across the organization. That may not be quite the right thing to do. So in this example here, we have, let's say, a sales org, how many times you're making an external Teams call per week. And on the right hand there, we have average number of conversions. Now, what we're seeing here is that 15 to 20 calls per week, in this case, gives the best number of conversions. So we might just say, okay, well, we have correlation here. All our sales folks will do 15 to 20 calls per week. That probably won't have the outcome that you want. Obviously, 10 to 15 is probably too few calls, but 20 to 25 calls, why is that getting fewer? There could be many reasons that would all invoke a different response to fix the challenge there. So it could be that employees have more time, if they have fewer calls, to do better customer research. They go into a call better prepared and give a better pitch to that customer that's more personalized to them. Or maybe they're actually working fewer hours, and thus they're fresher, they're less tired, they're less irritable on the phone with the customer, and many more things besides. But knowing which of those hypotheses is true will help you to actually, optimize for the right behaviors that 10, 15 to 20 bracket is actually achieving, rather than blanket down saying, here's the number of calls to do per week. So knowing about causation will help you to impact the KPIs in the right way to help you get to your goal. Step 4 then, the last step, is now to define your tactical KPIs. What are the actual things that you want to measure? I can't tell you that. You're all better than I do, but things to bear in mind: optimize for the goal that you want, okay? And encourage behaviors that cause good outcomes, okay? Asking someone to be at their computer screen for 8 hours a day and monitoring that via their webcam, is that going to get you the outcome that you want? It may, or it may not. And crucially, can you explain it? Can you explain how that KPI is linked to the outcome that you want? If you can do those things, you'll probably create good KPIs to achieve your goals. And then be agile, experiment. Don't be afraid to try things out and respond to feedback. And if things don't work, that's fine. Okay? Be agile, try something different. Experimentation is good in these new kinds of programs. So we've been through, hopefully we've defined some outcomes that we actually want to go with. Now, how do we implement? Again, I can't tell you that directly. Your business better than I do, but I can give you a framework for how to think about this in a good and responsible way. And this framework is based around 3 pillars and 6 items. Okay, the pillars are people, process, and tools, and the items are fairness, inclusivity, reliability and safety, privacy and security, transparency and accountability. This has been changed and borrowed from Microsoft's actual AI responsibility framework. And we've adapted it for our employee analytics framework as well. So let's talk about fairness first. Here's where we're saying that we should ensure that people who are similarly situated should be treated in the same way. Now, it doesn't mean that we should treat, say, our engineers and our sales folks in the same way, because they're differently situated. But it does mean that we should be treating all of our engineers and all of our sales folks within those groups in the same kind of way. This could be, say, around salaries. Are our salespeople, are our commission structures fair, and how we're measuring those things? Okay, are we analyzing people's performance in a fair way, given the role they're doing? We want to really try hard here to minimize human bias in the program that we have, which can be done through various things like getting data anonymized, masking or removing personally identifying data, minimizing the use of any, say, demographic data and analyses, things that could really be used to have our human biases come to the fore, because we all have them. Okay, all of us do. Secondly is inclusivity, ensuring really that everyone can benefit and be empowered by your program. So part of this is overcoming barriers to adoption among individuals, say, with disabilities. But another part as well is to make sure that all your people have data literacy. are they all literate enough to be able to make use of this program to improve in good ways? Can we give the training to help with that? And can we design it with diverse viewpoints? If everybody, designing this program is from your data team, that's one viewpoint. You will want to involve, other teams as well in this program's design to get that inclusivity and that range of viewpoints to bear. Reliability and safety. Now we're getting more into the tool side of things. So one hand of this is the reliability side. We want to make sure that your analytics is always available to the right people at the right time. Okay, if we want to go in and if we're having a sudden issue, we need to be able to go in and see that very quickly. The good news is that Microsoft Cloud offerings all have greater than 99.9% uptime, so they're generally very available, and robust pipelines can feed that reporting in real time or near real time using modern tools now fairly straightforwardly. And then in terms of safety, we should ensure that direct harm can't be caused by our program, or that it actually mitigates harm to our employees. So on one hand, we want to really avoid automating decision making, where the outcome can be severe. We don't really want to be firing people by AI program, for example. Okay, an AI might recommend that, but then we want to ensure that a human is the person who's in the loop there to prevent harm being made by your program. And on the other side, to mitigate harm, we should really be monitoring it for high-risk scenarios. If we are, let's say, monitoring people's, in-house Teams messages, and someone is, writing about suicidal tendencies, that might inform something that we do to try and mitigate harm to that person. Next up, privacy and security. So we want to make sure that people's privacy can't be compromised internally or externally. Part of this is now only monitoring what you need to monitor. It's very easy to say, well, I'll monitor everything a person does online. Should you be doing that? Especially if it's their own laptop and not a company laptop. Can we ensure that people's privacy can't be compromised with their team members, their teammates? And then abiding by any local laws, of course, where you operate. Many countries have privacy laws now around this sort of stuff. Ensuring that you are abiding by that globally is very important. And then, of course, security, big thing on everyone's minds here. Of course, this goes without saying, there should be high security around our program. Data should be encrypted. We should be adopting minimal role-based policies. If you don't need to see that data, you shouldn't be able to see that data. Easy as well to make it hacker-proof that way. And then be aware for social engineering attempts to get PII out of your program. Now, there's some great talks elsewhere from our security practice on this topic, elsewhere in the summit, so please check those out to get a lot more details around that. But I wanted just to mention it here because it is a thing to think about as you're doing this. Process then, the sort of third pillar, transparency. Ensure employees understand how their data is being collected and what data you are collecting about them. People accept in general that in a business world, their company communications are monitored. But tell them that. Be explicit. Post it somewhere. Okay? Can't hurt you. Okay? You have nothing to hide with this program if you're doing it well and responsibly. And the second part of that is ensuring that your employees understand how this will be used. Okay? What decisions might be made from this program. Okay? It could be all kinds of things that you make. It could be things to hire and fire. It could be things around coaching and mentorship, or promotions, or compensation. None of that's necessarily irresponsible, but make sure that people are aware of that and post it visibly. Okay, have leaders, both department and company, discuss it during meetings. And then ensure that you abide by that once you have it established. Okay, whatever you choose to do there, do what you say you'll do. And then be able to explain outcomes that arise from the program. Whether it be good or bad, explain it. Explainability is good. And finally, accountability. This one is often, I feel, trips people up a lot until it becomes a problem. We see it a lot in big tech companies as well. The people who work in and run an analytics program are the ones who are responsible for its operation. Okay, bluntly, it's never good enough to say the AI made me do it. Okay, we should be striving to be better than that with our programs. analytics gives you great insights, enormously powerful insights. So I've made my entire career out of this, so of course I'm going to say that. But humans should be making the decisions, informed by AI, informed by analytics, but not driven by it, or not. They should be driving it, not having it drive them. So ways that we can ensure that our approach is accountable: define clear responsibilities, both in the team and out of the team. And as part of that, consider creating an internal review body with stakeholders from across the organization. Back to that inclusivity point, have your data team, your C-suite team, and maybe part of your sales team and your marketing all coming together to help oversee this. Ensure humans are in the loop at critical stages. Don't make choices that you can't have a human being accountable for. And things happen, things do go wrong. Okay, we've seen it, say, at big tech companies, but then have a plan in place for dealing with that. If you do have some kind of privacy breach in your program, have a plan for dealing with that. If you do have a choice that gets made badly based on the program, again, have a plan for dealing with that. Okay, it will probably happen to you, so just be prepared for it in advance. So that is my take on how to go about creating a responsible analytics program for your employees. So we covered there, what I mean by responsible and why it's different to being ethical, and why I think it's a preferred framework for the world we live in today. How you can set goals and objectives to make your program a success, and then 6 principles that you can use to guide how you build your program as you're doing it. Please feel free to scan these QR codes and let us know